if I could ask those of you who are standing, if you could take your seats now. We're closing this door here because there's still a lot of people registering, so we'll see these people filtering in from the top of the room. And it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the European Commission's Food 2030 conference. Thanks to those of us who are joining us in the various listening rooms here in this square. And I know we have a huge number of people attending. I think it speaks to the significance of the topic, food. And that's why we're all here today, really, to find out how we can sustain ourselves long-term, what kind of food should we be producing for the future, food for 2030 particularly, and beyond. And before I get really into the sort of the theme of how we're going to be running today, I want to talk about Twitter as well, because that's very important, because the day is very packed and we won't have a lot of time to take questions from you. So DG's Research, Directorate General for Research and Innovation, wants to really find out what your views are, and the way they're going to really get that is through your tweets. So remember, the hashtag is the hashtag that's going to bind all of us together. So it's hashtag Food2030EU. So please do use it. They'll be monitoring it throughout the day, and of course as well in the coming days they'll be mining through what you have said, because that's going to inform them what research and innovation, along with all the things that are going to come out over today and yesterday as well, what direction they should be taking in terms of the future of our foods, how to make ourselves more sustainable, to ensure the production of our foods are more sustainable. Because the figures are quite staggering. According to the United Nations Population Fund, it took hundreds of thousands of years for the world population to grow to 1 billion. But in just 200 years, it grew sevenfold. And by 2011, the global population reached the 7 billion mark. And today, it's over 7.3 billion, which is staggering, that increase. And the estimate is that the global population may rise to 8.5 billion by 2030. That's only 16 years away. So that's why it's very important to find out how can we ensure that there will be enough food to feed the world's population by 2030 and beyond, and that it's sustainable, and that we have security of our foods as well. And that's really the central theme here for this conference, to find out what can we be doing to ensure the security of our food for 2030 and beyond. So we have a very, very packed program, and I'm delighted to say we're going to open proceedings by four very senior officials with us here in the room. We'll then be going on to have a number of panel debates during the whole day's proceedings. So it's my great pleasure now to introduce our first senior speaker, and we have Carlos Moedas, who is the European Commissioner for Research, Science and Innovation.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. First of all, two very dear friends that I want to acknowledge. They're talking to each other. One is my dear Vice President of the European Parliament, Mairead McGuinness, champion of science and all these subjects. And my dear friend, Phil Hogan, Commissioner Hogan. Thank you very much for being all the time around me, also when I need you. So it's a good thing. And then to the CEO of Nestlé, Paul Bulc, that accepted to be with us here today. So I'm really happy to see so many of you that are here at this Food 2030 conference. I actually first discussed this initiative a year ago when I went to the Expo Milan with my dear friend Phil Hogan. And there I met someone that I think I'm seeing on the audience, which is Mark O'Dood. He's there. And Mark inspired me a lot. He's at the time I think he was 16 years old or 17. I don't know if he's there. And Mark is an inventor and a scientist. And he, at such a young age, because he is so passionate about food and agriculture, and it comes from the family, he decided that one of the things that he wanted to do is to get better production of crop yields. And I don't know how. I mean, at that age, he started trying it, and he basically perforated seeds, and saw that if you perforate seeds, then you get more holes, and you can get more out of the crop. What an amazing idea. And so, Mark, I've been telling your story for so long to so many people, and I'm so happy that you're back. So I can actually talk to you after this a little bit more, because you are the new kind of scientists that are people that are so in love that you are not even in college or university. You're doing it by yourself. And so you're such an example that I was so inspired by it that I wanted to actually look forward, and that's where the idea came with here with the team, with everybody in my team, Ruxandra and John Bell, to go ahead with this conference. Food and nutrition is really at the heart of society and communities. It's a huge part of our economy, providing jobs, health, and employment. We must protect these. And however, we need to do more than securing what we have. We have to keep to our commitments. You see, we have committed ourselves to improve people's lives. And we did the Paris Climate Agreement. We did the Sustainable Development Goals. We had the goal of a circular, sustainable economy. We have our President Juncker's 10 priorities. But then you think about it and you say, but look, I mean, this is too vague, this is too macro, right? It's like you look at priorities that are too broad. And so what's our job as politicians and as leaders and as people is to get these dreams that are up there of this climate deal, of these sustainable goals, and get it to the micro level, get them to the detail. And I say to you clearly, we cannot meet these commitments without far higher ambitions for research and innovation in our food systems. We must do more. And to succeed in doing it, we need to see transformative breakthrough changes, not just incremental changes. This is possible today because we are at the verge of a next technological revolution, and it's coming to food and nutrition. But in my opinion, and that's what I wanted to go through today with you, just to start off the day, was to tell you what are the areas that, for me, are of the utmost importance. First, I wanted to have a word on nutrition. Second, on climate, and third, on the circular economy. But let's start by nutrition. I believe that we can take inspiration from medicine. And I took that inspiration from my Deputy Director General, Ruxandra, that we really use, or it used to be the case that the type of cancers, for instance, all patients would be given the same certain drug. And now things are different. Now one person gets one specific drug because his tumor has a particular protein at its surface. Another person takes a different one because her liver cannot break down another drug. And so the interesting thing about this is that in medicine and in pharmaceuticals, you're going from something that was pure chemistry to a different profession, to engineering. So you go for something that you would give something to someone that to go into his body as a chemical substance. And now, the future of this profession will not be about it. It will be about people that can turn off and on cells. That's an electrical engineering job. So that comes back to the need that we have to go in between the disciplines. And that's what we call personalized medicine. And we need to start thinking about personalized nutrition. We have to go from the idea of nutrition to the personalized nutrition. Because if all of us here in this room were fed the very same food, we would not at all feel the same way. At least I don't. At my age, I cannot eat red meat at as I would like to do, and I feel bad, and some people feel good. And our bodies and our health would be different. A huge part of the variation between people is something that you call, and you know more than I do, the microbiome. And this means that all bacteria and other microorganisms that live inside us are actually more than our human cells. And so I went to see that 70-kilogram man, which is a little bit taller than me, it's between me and Commissioner Hogan, has about 40 trillion bacteria and just 30 trillion human cells. So these bacteria have a huge effect on our digestion and our health, and they are unique to each of us. But there's also the microbiome of plants, or the soil, or the livestock, or the oceans, and all of these interact in complex ways, and we have only started scratching the surface. This is a major area of research, and the potential here is nothing less than a food and nutrition revolution. With more research in nutrition, especially in the microbiome, we can make really smart, personalized nutrition a reality. So I'm happy to announce today that the European Commission is launching an international bioeconomy forum. With our international partners, we'll start with a pilot on the microbiome. Then we'll take a look further at issues how research and innovation can better really give opportunities for food and nutrition, because that's the question. And that gets me to the second subject, the second area that I mentioned earlier, which is food and climate. And research and innovation play a huge role, and this can be done in two ways. One is our research actually has an impact, or the impact of climate in terms of food, in terms of agriculture and fisheries. And second, the impact of our food production on climate change. The climate has an enormous impact on agriculture. Fish populations can radically change in a region because of salt, temperature, or food sources. On land changes in temperatures and rainfall can have positive effects, or they can mean the destruction of livelihoods or even the whole communities. So on this particular point, I want to set up with you three priorities. First, I want to see research that maps the effects of climate change on food. I want research that can predict climate effects, so we can prepare our food systems. And third, I want innovative ideas that will make our communities and our food sources resilient. As I mentioned, when we think of food in 2030, we also need to think the other way around. What impacts do our food systems have on climate? Normally, people mean this is in a negative kind of way, and this is not for no reason. In Europe, our food systems contribute up to 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. However, I said that at the start of the speech that we need a far higher ambition if we are to succeed. And for this, we need to change our thinking. Soils can absorb huge amounts of carbon. The oceans are actually the largest absorber of carbon in the planet. Actually, the microbiome, everything today goes back to the microbiome. Microbes in the oceans produce 50% of our oxygen, the oxygen we breathe. And through photosynthesis, they remove, let's say, the same proportion of the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Agroforestry plays a very important role too, and we need research that open new possibilities to use agriculture to get carbon back into soils and keep it there. We need to create incentives so that farmers actually use these methods. We need to change the narrative and show how the food sector can also play its role to combat climate change. And this was all to my friend, Commissioner Hogan, and he didn't pay me for it. So it was perfectly in line. And I believe that really here we have a major role in between agriculture and research. And that's why we've been working so closely. Finally, I want to highlight the circular economy. And through the circular economy, our food systems that can better deliver nutrition and combat climate change. The circular economy is about smarter use of resources. It's about jobs and growth where people live. It's about applying research in concrete ways. And here, a lot still needs to be done. We need regions to use their unexploited biomass potential to invest in circular economy. They should work with industry and researchers to develop solutions for climate and nutrition challenges. For example, to provide new sources of protein that we will stop wasting waste in the food sector. Last year, I attended a prize in biotech SMEs, and the winning company was Celtic Renewables, that actually do something very interesting. They turn waste barley from Scotch whiskey into biofuels. And I remember thinking that what they're doing is nothing short of a kind of a modern day alchemy, turning waste into a product. And this is inspiring, and I wanted to see more, really more of these, and that's our job in the European Commission. How can we grab people that are doing this new alchemy, that are actually doing these new ideas and disrupting? And the potential is enormous to fight climate change with this type of really disruption. And I want our cities to be involved also. Milan is leading by example with their new food strategy. This is being exhibited in the Food Village, and I encourage you all to take a look at it. For this to happen on a large scale, we need to have proper support in place for our cities and for our small companies that have these good ideas, and we have to be the ones that give that support. The need for proper support is true for all these priorities in order to understand and deliver nutrition, to have a positive impact on climate, to realize our goal of circular economy. To do these things, we need to improve the quality of the EU's support for innovation. And for these, we are working to develop a new idea that I wanted just to tell you in a nutshell. We call it the European Innovation Council. And this is about really capturing these market-creating innovations that come from different fields. And for that, you have to have instruments that go bottom-up, where you don't tell people what to do. Because if I want to grasp these ideas, that someone that used to be a pharmacist wants to create something in engineering, I have to break those barriers. And so the Innovation Council will be about that, will be about creating instruments that are more bottom-up in the Commission, that actually can grasp in a simpler, faster, and more bottom-up way these new ideas. There are over 300,000 food-based small and medium enterprises in the EU. They would benefit from an increase in this type of funding. They also need a better supply of risk capital, and that's why we're developing the fund of funds that could invest in a combination of early stage and later stage ideas. And this is vital if you want to create the next Uber or the next Airbnb. They'll come, I think, those next Ubers and Airbnbs will come in this sector. These will happen because people are deeply, really concerned, but at the same time, they know that their future depends on creating these opportunities. They want better food, they want smarter food, they want more sustainable food, and we must commit to support to new ideas as we can. So we have just published our ideas on our food strategy, and these will be presented by my good friend John Bell. And it looks like at the need to adapt these food systems to a new approach, underpinned by sustainability, linking the land and the sea, from producers to consumers and back again. Today, I'd like to ask you to engage with our strategy and to make it better and stronger, to consider how you might contribute to it. Commissioner Hogan and I extend you an open invitation to work more collaborative and more holistically. We are always open to suggestions on how to take these ideas further. Ladies and gentlemen, we ask for this engagement because it's crucial that we get this right. Food is a massive industry, and we must protect it. But more than that, food is about communities, is about growth where people live. It's about investing not in abstract concepts, but in real, tangible benefits that people can see. And this is exactly what I believe Europe's research and innovation can do. As Ban Ki-moon once said, in a world of plenty, no one, not a single person, should starve. However, almost 1 billion do not have enough to eat. I want to see an end to that in my lifetime, he said. We count on you for that. So thank you very much and enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And as the Commissioner said, there's a very close link between agriculture and research. And bearing that in mind now, I'd like to invite on stage Phil Hogan, the European Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development.
Thank you very much, Karen, Commissioner, Vice President McGuinness, distinguished guests, CEO of Nestle, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I wish to thank Commissioner Moedas for his intervention. He has, of course, been leading from the front in making Food 2030 a reality, and I salute him for his vision and efforts he has poured into this collaboration. And last year, during our visit to Expo Milan, Carlos and I launched a long-term plan for European agricultural research and innovation. And today we see the first, the early fruits from the seed that we planted on that occasion. Your mission today, as Carlos has pointed out, is to discuss how we can build on the current political momentum to make further progress. And gathered in this room, we have a wide variety of people, stakeholders such as farm organisations, food entrepreneurs, researchers, people from rural and urban backgrounds, private and public sector, all sorts of experts and advisors, and rural development managing authorities. So there's no excuse. You're all here. And ultimately what we hope to harvest in this occasion is a coherent and visionary policy guiding research and innovation policy in the area of EU food and nutrition security. As Carlos has mentioned, in conjunction with today's event, the Commission is launching a staff working document entitled European Research and Innovation for Food and Nutrition Security. This document elaborates on the breadth and depth of our food systems, both local and global. It highlights the need for more and better research and innovation when it comes to our food systems. And crucially, it acknowledges that sustainability must be the foundation of our future strategies in this area. John Bell will provide further details during the next session, so I don't want to preempt what he might want to say. The CAP, of course, is already playing a major role. This year, €16.3 billion of the CAP budget will be geared towards climate and sustainability, with a very strong emphasis on modernisation and innovation. This includes greening practices, ensuring, among other priorities, the maintenance of permanent grassland in Europe as an important carbon sink. It also covers funding under the Rural Development Programme to support farm modernisation in order to cut energy consumption, fertiliser use and greenhouse gas emissions. And I believe it's important to remind ourselves why the use of innovation and research to improve both yields and sustainability is so vital. Food and nutrition security is something that the vast majority of European citizens now take for granted, even though in about 60 years ago there were many people in Europe who were starving and in need of food. So Europe has now become self-sufficient in high-quality food and certainly a net exporter of food products since 2010. So a lot of success over the last 60 years. But through our shared common agricultural policy, we have an integrated and well-funded mechanism which provides our citizens with the highest quality food and drink. And European Union food is safe, nutritious, traceable and plentiful. And our food products will be needed, as speakers have mentioned already, when we expect 9 billion people by 2050. There will be also an extra 3 billion people to join the middle classes over the next 70 years, and therefore the world will need to increase food production by 70% over 2005 levels. This is a very strong challenge and a very big target. And meeting this demand would in itself be reason enough to build a stronger European blueprint for food research and innovation. But the reality is that we need to do much more than that. In today's world, our food security must not come at the price of environmental sustainability. And Commissioner Moedas made this point very clear and very eloquently, and I agree with it. Our ongoing fight against climate change and environmental degradation requires our food production systems to become smarter and greener. And we have committed to being a global leader by setting ambitious targets under COP21 and the Sustainable Development Goals. And our agri-food sector must be empowered to lead from the front in this challenge. After all, there are 11 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals involving agriculture and food. It's worth remembering that we've come a long ways. The CAP has helped to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 23% since 1990 and has reduced the level of nitrates in rivers by 17.7% since 1992, but we have to do a lot more. This is a clear indication, but of course, that if farmers are incentivised and rewarded for the work, they can deliver. Who else can we get to deliver if we don't engage the farmers and incentivise them to do so? There are our boots on the ground in the countryside and our boots on the ground in the agricultural sector. We need them to deliver. Our society is facing a number of growing and critically important food-related challenges, and we need our farmers involved and on board. We know that Europe has every capacity to become a champion in environment and climate-smart agriculture, and we have some of the world's leading agricultural research institutes with decades of experience. We have policymakers who are fully in tune with these challenges. The recent European Parliament reports by MEPs McIntyre and Huitema have been very positive contributions, and they highlight the need for the Commission to stimulate the development and uptake of precision farming. They also urge the Commission to include innovation in any forthcoming review or reform. So we know that we have the capacity and the ingenuity to develop new solutions for keeping our soils healthy, our water clean, and our environment rich in species to keep away pests. However, please we have to make sure that our strategies keep the farmer at the centre. At the end of the day, it is the men and women working on the land who must deliver, and the CAP has always been and continues to be a farmer-orientated policy, but our new methods and our new innovation practices must serve the greater societal good, but they must also serve the farmer's bottom line. With a fair reward for their work, we cannot expect but farmers to continue delivering food security as well as the broad spectrum of wider public goods. Therefore, I would urge you to work towards solutions which reward the farmer. Production efficiency has a direct impact on farmers' income. They will also be able to produce at lower costs with all of the innovation and research that we will discuss. And with all other things being equal, this will mean that farming income should go up. The fact that input use is reduced also means very positive resource implications for the environment. So it's a win-win situation if all of us work together. And look at the options where we go from here. Carlos has outlined some of the choices available to us in the coming years. Many innovative solutions are already emerging across our food systems, and further advances in research and innovation will accelerate the rate of progress. For example, digital technologies hold enormous promise for the agri-food sector and the food chain as a whole. Smart farming and precision agriculture are already changing the practices and business models for the most advanced farms and agri-businesses. In the last 10 years, precision agriculture has moved from good science to good practice, and now in excess of 70% of the new equipment sold has some form of precision agriculture component inside. And the most successful example of precision agriculture on arable land is the use of controlled traffic farming, which has been able to reduce machinery and input costs by up to 75% in some cases, while also increasing crop yields. But there is still a large untapped potential in digital technologies in the European Union for European farmers. Our European model of agriculture supports the family farm as well as the large-scale operator. So we need to see a wider uptake of research and innovation. Big data in combination with precision farming technologies can help our farmers to optimise their operations and lead to completely new business models in the agri-food sector. For example, the Internet of Things brings connectivity and intelligence to existing products. Apps already exist, allowing a farmer to receive data on grass growth and animal health to his mobile phone. And the development of the unmanned aerial vehicle industry is likely to benefit agriculture in numerous ways, and not just for data gathering. Cattle monitoring and examination, as well as crop sowing, fertilising, spraying and examination can all be accomplished by UAVs, and an entire manufacturing industry is gearing up to get started in these areas. When I visited Ireland last year with Commissioner Moedas, we saw firsthand a multi-partner European project which helps farmers measure grass quantity more accurately using ultrasonic sensors with recorded GPS coordinates. And our ambition must be to take technologies like the Internet of Things or big data to the next level in the agri-food sector. One clear way to achieve this is by investing in large-scale demonstrators, which show in real-life conditions how new technologies can benefit users of all sizes. And I've attended numerous agricultural shows throughout the European Union since I became Commissioner, and I've already seen many great examples of this. As you know, we are supporting the rollout of agri-tech under our Rural Development Policy and Horizon 2020. These are initiatives which are specifically targeting the agri-food sector. If we take Horizon 2020, one good current example is the large-scale pilot of the Internet of Things. This is titled Smart Farming and Food Security and is included in the Horizon 2020 work programme for this year and next. Going beyond promising technologies and applications, I would like to stress the importance of building better territorial linkages in shaping our food systems. The urban-rural linkage is particularly important. In the context of the circular economy, we need to be smarter about how we can use urban food waste. And rebuilding the producer-consumer relationships and food supply chains and the role of regional food systems was at the centre of a recent EIP Agri workshop on cities and food, connecting consumers and producers. This event brought together a wide array of stakeholders to orientate policies and programmes towards more sustainable food chains and to create common actions to establishing local and healthy food systems. These are positive steps, which we have to encourage. But if we are really serious about fostering a culture of innovation at every echelon of our sector, we must strive to make research more demand-driven. Scientists, investors and agri-entrepreneurs need to involve farmers in the early stages of project design. Innovations must serve the farmer's need, and all of the other benefits I mentioned earlier will flow from this. Therefore, we have to put more emphasis in Horizon 2020 on innovation and interaction between science and practice through, among other things, multi-actor projects involving not only researchers but also other players such as farmers and the agri-food industry. On the Horizon 2020, around €500 million have been dedicated to multi-actor projects from 2014 to 2017. And to speed up innovation on the ground, we established the European Innovation Partnership, or Agricultural Productivity and Sustainability. This helps to bridge the gap between research and practice, bridge the gap between science and the farmer. More than 3,000 innovation projects are in line to be funded under our Rural Development Programmes 2014-2020. And I'm very pleased that EIP Agri has been taken up so widely by EU member states and regions in their new rural development programmes. These innovative cooperation projects involve farmers working together with other food chain actors, with advisors, with researchers, to find concrete and practical solutions to particular problems. EIP innovation projects are tackling issues not only related to agriculture, but the food chain as a whole. For example, the Inu Wheat project gathers all wheat value chain players to develop a sustainable and environmentally friendly wheat value chain. Other EIP operational groups are working on novel food approaches, ensuring food safety and reducing environmental pressure. I would also remind you that there are financial instruments available through the European Fund for Strategic Investments, whose function is to provide loans to innovative companies with a potential for return on investment. Take-up has been low in the food innovation sector so far, and we have to see what we have to do to improve that. And as Commissioner with responsibility for agriculture and rural development on the one side, and agricultural research and innovation on the other, it is clear to me that we will make progress when we link the right instruments and policies together. I am grateful to have in Commissioner Moedas a colleague who has the same positive and proactive approach to synergies. It's not because of our height that we cannot produce synergies. By linking our policy platforms together, we have become stronger and better funded. Integrating our policy instruments as we have done with EIP Agri is a perfect example of how we are working together and how we are turning out a powerful driver of agricultural innovation that can have a real impact on the ground. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can agree that our agricultural innovation systems need to be strengthened and further developed. We've already made some real and impressive progress. The political momentum is there for us to do even more. At political level in Europe, there is growing support for the establishment of the innovation principle to encourage new legislation to be supportive of innovation. And I encourage you to take this excellent opportunity to drive things on. And today in this conference, you will be looking at recommendations that we look forward to receiving with interest. So thank you and good luck with the proceedings.
Thank you, Commissioner, and welcome to those of you who have been coming in over the last 10 minutes or so. You're very welcome to the conference. Well, we've heard from the two commissioners, but what about those in industry, particularly food industries? What do they have to say about our future needs and the production and supply of that food? Well, to get that perspective now, it's my pleasure to invite on stage Paul Bulcke, the CEO of Nestlé, which is the world's biggest producer of food products.
Thank you. Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Moedas, Commissioner Hogan, the Vice President of the European Parliament, McGuinness. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today in front of such an important and distinguished audience about a topic that I'm personally very close to and passionate about. That is about food and nutrition and innovation and science in the food sector. I'm also delighted to see that the European Union is adopting a strategic approach to food and food research as such. And I'm happy to provide already some angles from our side here. Innovation and science are at the heart of Nestlé, the company that I've been working for almost my whole adult life. That's no more than 37 years. In fact, the roots of our company were laid by a man, Henri Nestlé, Heinrich Nestle, actually. And Henri Nestlé was a pioneer and an entrepreneur motivated by the challenges and needs of society in which he was living, and which are actually quite the same as we have today. He invented a product, farine lactée, a groundbreaking nutritional innovation which saved the life of a child and afterwards of thousands of children. It saved them from undernourishment, in the main cause of infant mortality at that time. And today, a century and a half later, that's 150 years ago that it happened, and a century and a half later, this vision and also this pioneering spirit continues to define who we are as a company. And today we are still motivated by the nutritional breakthrough innovation of that day. And today innovation is at the heart of our company. Ladies and gentlemen, when you saw the title of this event, Food 2030, the first reaction may have been as a consumer saying, well, is that a question about what we're gonna eat in 2030? How will it be different from now? And 2030 sounds like a distant future, but in fact, it is less than one generation away. And so how much change can we expect really? Well, it is sure that by 2030 the world will be a different place. Just think about some of the ambitions on climate change to start with. By 2030 the EU should have cut its greenhouse gas emissions by 40% compared to the 1990 levels. Already by 2025, Norway plans, for example, to have banned all fossil fuels-based cars. Who would have imagined that even just 10 years ago? But this is symptomatic for what's happening in our times. Change no longer happens in linear pace. It happens exponentially by big strides. Exponentially because of rapid technological development and the possibilities to access global networks. But also because the challenges we are facing, which are growing exponentially per se, challenges that tell us there is no such thing as business as usual, not anymore. If there ever was, our society is really at an inflection point, and we feel it so much here in Europe. Our society is at an inflection point. And food is right in the middle of so many of today's critical challenges. Just think about resource scarcity. By 2030, our consumption of fresh water will overshoot sustainable supplies by 40%. By 40%. 70% of the world's fresh water is used by agriculture. Biodiversity is declining at an alarming rate. And I already mentioned climate change, which will not only influence the availability of raw materials, but also where and how we will produce them. These developments are intrinsically linked to food security, our capacity to have enough to feed a world of 9 to 10 billion people. And this brings me to the other main challenge, that of nutrition and addressing the complex double burden of malnutrition. In today's world, and we know the figures, 2 billion people are overweight or obese, and almost 1 billion people go to bed hungry every day today. This analysis is not new, and we know, as I said, the figures, but if we want to resolve these issues, we need to step up our efforts. We need to rethink how we operate, how we produce, how we consume, and how we innovate. It's not about pushing the same buttons harder that we're going to get there. We have to rethink how we operate, but also how we innovate. None of us can tackle this alone. The challenges are too big. We need a partnership between governments, academics, industry, and NGOs. We need innovation based on robust science. We also need trust. We need to build trust by working in all transparency, by applying long-term thinking, responsible behavior, by creating value not just for ourselves and our shareholders, but also for society at large. We call that in Nestlé working by creating shared value. That's the fundamental role of economy, also of industry and society. We also need to build trust in science and give science a chance. We have to give science a chance. Science and knowledge is at the base of evolution. That is not always easy, certainly not in Europe. Emotions take sometimes over, but it is only through science and knowledge that we can change things for the better. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you for a few minutes about health. Over the last century, food has played a crucial role in adding healthy life years in Europe and globally. Good food, good nutrition is the best inducer of health. This is the area where Nestlé wants to operate, where we want to create value for society. We sell about 1.3 billion products a day. And these are all, each of them, opportunities to influence people's health. So we have a responsibility as a company, and we take up that responsibility. For example, our scientists at the Nestlé Research Center are working hard to reduce sugar, salt, and fat in our products. This sounds simple, but frankly speaking, this is very hard. But it's not because it's hard that we're not doing it. It is Nestlé's most expensive R&D dimension we have. Taste, shelf life, volume, texture, all of this is impacted when you take something out. So we need to find clever solutions, and we are going after this. Solutions that help us to achieve our ambition, to provide healthier, but also tastier choices, to be the reference in our category. And all our R&D is inspired by two fundamental considerations. That is, do not harm, and stay close and be inspired by nature. Innovation is about improving what we have, but it's also about being visionary and preparing for the future. It's being open-minded. Food products and food systems have their different roles to play in society. From mere survival over pleasure to delivering balanced nutrition. And now, at the onset of what is called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, unprecedented knowledge and science are opening up for new possibilities. It's amazing to see how science has evolved in the last years on nutrition. This revolution in nutrition is driven by new insights in the field of life science, the genome, microbiome, but also digital, artificial intelligence, even robotics. This revolution is driven also by a much better understanding how nutrients interact with health, how nutrients interact with the human body. And it's amazing to note that this understanding is actually very new, how nutrients interact with the human body and health over the years. For example, we are learning a lot about the epigenetic control of metabolic health, which reveals how your parents and grandparents' diet, their diet and lifestyles affect your future health. Our work on the first 1,000 days, as we call it, the first 1,000 days in life, has shown that maternal nutrition before birth already determines the development potential of a child. And the more we learn, the more we realize that we need to evolve from a global to a personalized approach. All of us have different nutritional needs, but we also respond differently to the same nutrients. Offer the same food to two identical twins and their physiological reaction will be different. So how can we provide the best nutrition solution to you as an individual? That's what we are working on also. That's an area I believe that Europe should be working on too. Personalized nutrition offers tremendous opportunities. It can help us to actively manage our health through what we eat. Food will become a powerful tool in the prevention of diseases. In the context of a rapidly aging society such as Europe, this is all the more important and relevant. And to achieve that, we have to move from today's healthcare model, which is actually sick care model. It is caring for people with illnesses, to actively caring about health, inducive health, to prevent disease. I see this as one of the core priorities for innovation for our sector. And I encourage regulators to anticipate this evolution. This is new. Of course, having spent the last few minutes talking about the revolution in nutrition, I am strongly convinced that this is not an or, but this is an and story. Mainstream food products will continue to exist and play their important role. Food will continue to fulfill everyday's nutritional needs, also our personal and societal needs, our enjoyment. It will continue to bring quality, and it will continue to bring quality of life in all its aspects. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from nutrition, I believe that environmental sustainability is another key priority for innovation and science, especially here also in European food chains. We need to improve the environmental performance of our products along their value chain and to be more transparent about our challenges, our efforts, our progress. We need to stop wasting food and resources. I'm personally committed to that as a member of the Champions 12.3, advocating for the Sustainable Development Goals to halve food waste by 2030. Nestlé on itself will be a zero-waste company by 2020. Other companies are making similar commitments. The Consumer Goods Forum, a coalition of the world's largest retailers and fast-moving consumer goods companies, are pledging also to halve the food waste by 2020. And that's a lot of industries, lots of companies doing that. That's worldwide. I'm convinced we will get there. Water. Water is another key priority. There is no food without water. Sometimes strange to speak about water scarcity in Belgium, but it's a very complex issue that we urgently need to tackle worldwide, in the food supply chain primarily, but also in our operations. Last year we completed our first zero water factory, for example, in our 460 factories, and we are rolling that out in many more factories as we speak. Lighthouse projects like this set an example for the rest of the company, the rest of us all, and have a spillover effect to the industry at large. As with nutrition, these incremental improvements are not obvious, and the further we evolve, the more difficult it will become. We have to be persistent and go all the way, but the science is there if we give the science a chance to do so much of that. I also believe that we should look at nutrition and sustainability together. With the rising middle classes and projected population growth, the demand for animal proteins in a business-as-usual scenario is not possible. That's why we are expanding our portfolio of products based on plant proteins and plant sources like soy, pea, and wheat. And we are also exploring new sources like oil cakes, algae, and leaf proteins. There's a vast area left to be explored still, and that's part of our R&D, is just doing that. It is translating science and insights into products of daily life. At the same time, we need to innovate our food system as a whole. We need to find ways to include the positive and negative impacts of our activities into the value of our products. Maybe it is through concepts such as natural and social capital valuation. Certainly, it requires enabling policy frameworks that encourage companies to compete not only on price and taste, but also nutrition and health, or the environmental impact of their products. This will also help to better value our products for what they really are, which in turn can help to get our sector out of the deflationary spiral of pricing only, especially here in Europe. It can help us to grow the pie instead of just fighting for the largest pieces. It is also going to induce the right behaviors. It will also help closing the trust gap with consumers, which is more needed than ever, especially with millennials. Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the challenges are immense, but solutions are manifold and exist. Answers are there. First of all, we need to understand that this is a multi-stakeholder approach. Each of us has a role to play. Policymakers, international organizations, scientists, the food industry, companies, individuals. No one can solve this on his own, and we have to work together, but honestly. Second, we need to be open-minded for science and technology and knowledge to play its role responsibly. We need to have an open discussion on science. We need to give science a chance, and I think Europe there is challenged. The world is challenged there. Give knowledge a chance. Third, we need to keep the perspective right. The perspective is long-term. Short-term will lead to unintended consequences, to wasted efforts and missed opportunities. And while the perspective is global, many solutions are in fact local. Water is an example of that. Ladies and gentlemen, food has always played an important role in the evolution of mankind. Evolution means adapting to new circumstances. Well, the circumstances of today no longer allow us to keep on doing what we are doing today, nor does it allow us to do it the same way we are doing it today. We must change. So it's time to think about a new deal for food. Hence the importance of what we do here today. For me, that's why we are here, with an ambitious European strategy on food and innovation, with equally ambitious resources to deliver. I'm confident that together we can change things for the better. My company, Nestlé, will do its part. I promise. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that very, very interesting address. I think you have given us a lot of very interesting points which we'll take throughout the day because we're having a number of panel debates. And thank you again for that. And now to get the perspective from the European Parliament, I'd like to invite on stage Mairead McGuinness, a Vice President of the European Parliament and an Irish MEP representing Fine Gael. And indeed, many of the people that Deputy McGuinness represents in her own constituency come from farming, rural backgrounds. She's very familiar with these issues. So, Mairead.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're over time, which means I'll tear up the script and talk, because I think we've had a lot of very interesting comments from our food industry experts and from our commissioners. And I've had a very interesting week. I've had a confusing week. And let me begin by telling you some of the conflicts that happen in terms of policy around food, because fundamentally, food is political, highly political. I was involved in the international launch of the Global Hunger Index just, I think, 2 days ago. We celebrated and marked World Food Day, and we had Commissioner Hogan in the Agriculture Committee yesterday talking about current problems on the farm and future perspectives. And all of this should be running, if you like, in the same direction, but much of the discussion around these issues also comes with people's opinion about these various issues around the food chain. And that's why the role of science in helping to shape opinion is absolutely vital. Paul, you mentioned the word trust. And I think that is an absolutely crucial word. One of the roles I have in the European Parliament is looking after the STOA panel, which is trying to make science and policy makers hold hands across the table or on the same chair even. And increasingly, I think that's more and more difficult, frankly. And I think there is an issue for science to start speaking out, and for scientists, and I have two of them, not quite at home, but in college at various stages, to talk about your work, your results, and to engage with society about what you do. Increasingly, I think scientists are moving back from that space because they're concerned about the negative consequences of what they say in the public space. But I would urge you not to do that. I urge you to come forward. And I think this gathering this morning is great, if you like, evidence of how much knowledge and influence you can have if you talk out and let your voices be heard. But we need to allow you to do that as well. And that's why the role of the European Parliament is important in this discussion, and why I'm happy to be here, not representing the entire views of the Parliament, but at least representing the Parliament. I'm on the Agriculture Committee, the Environment Committee, and as I mentioned, on STOA. And all of the issues that are, if you like, reflected in this very simple graphic are issues that we deal with on a daily basis. I'm happy to see a woman there, although I'd be equally as happy to see a man there. I was very happy, Paul, that you mentioned nutrition for mothers. And breastfeeding is hugely important in all of this. And the entirety of our lives. I worry sometimes when we talk about nutrition profiling, because when I sat down for breakfast or for lunch, I don't think about nutrition profiling. Maybe by 2030 I will, because I'll be older and I'll need things to keep me well if I'm still around. If I'm not, somebody else will worry about these things. But I want to make sure that the food I eat now and in the future is good for me. But I don't think we want to think about that as consumers. So let me try and talk to you about consumers and citizens and all of this, if you like, graphic. Because it's like the engine of my car. I know it's there. I don't ever want to have to look underneath the bonnet, except when it breaks down. And then I want to find somebody who'll fix it if I can't do it myself. Consumers and citizens want to know that this works. But here today, we're frankly saying it's not working. Because the way we're producing and consuming, distributing, packaging is not sustainable. Water's been mentioned, soils have been mentioned, energy is part of this. So this very nice, free-flowing graphic is coming apart. And 2030, I have to say, I hadn't realised how close it was until commissioners and the panellists mentioned how close it is. It's around the corner. So this will fall apart if we keep doing what we're doing. So what do citizens and consumers want? I mean, safety was a big issue. It probably still is, but it's not to the forefront. So we presume that our food is safe. We get frightened if it's not, and we react. But for the moment, we presume the food is safe within Europe, and we've good standards to ensure that. After that, as mothers, as fathers, we want to feed our children well. But how do we know we're doing that? Most of us come to this job of parenting children with baggage from our own past. A knowledge maybe that's gained wisely, or just opinions that we have. So I think the role of social science is really important, of psychology, of psychiatry on this subject is absolutely vital. Because if we're talking about trying to bring about change, not just in what farmers do, and Commissioner Hogan is driving that, or researchers do, and Commissioner Moedas is driving that, or the food industry is doing, you've got to look at the economics of what you do as well as everything else. We want to see what motivates me as a citizen and as a consumer to change my behaviour. And we know when it comes to things like trying to improve our behaviours around smoking, how difficult it is to get people to change behaviours. It's an extreme example. But therefore, we need to understand how people think, how they function, how they work, and how we can make us think about this bigger picture and therefore act at a local level, at a plate level, when we sit down to consume. I think citizens want to do the right thing. That's just a given, and we hope we're doing that. If you take recycling, for example, of waste, I mean, the European Union has done tremendous work with member states so that we don't waste as much as we do. We don't dump carelessly My parents, my grandparents' generation, they probably produced less to dump, but they did dump carelessly. Today we don't do that. We recycle, and we've still a long way to go. But it is an example of how we can do things much better. And while I'm on that subject of waste, the issue of food waste is hugely important at every point in the food production chain. One of the things that happened in my lifetime, and it's longer than I would like it to be, but we used to have a focus on food production, the production at farm level. There was a great deal of investment in member states around research, but also extension and advisory services. So we had knowledge, but we had a way of making sure that farmers used that knowledge and consumers got the benefits and the results. And I'm afraid there was a time, not now, we're back to a better place, but there was a time where that chain was broken, where we regarded food as, well, it's there, we know we have enough, or we buy and we can see it in the supermarkets. It wasn't the big worry. And we're now back to a place where it is a significant issue politically again. But in the meantime, we have broken, if you like, what member states used to do around research and advisory services. This was mentioned yesterday at the World Food Day event, where we came together with the Development Committee, the Environment Committee, and the Agriculture Committee. And we need to have a conversation at European level, but also in the member states, about how we're going to, if you like, fix that issue. And one way we're doing it in the country that I come from is we bring farmers together. Rather than an advisor going out on a one-to-one, we bring them together in producer organisations or groups or discussion groups to talk and meet and exchange ideas. And it sounds very simple, and you wouldn't think you'd have to actually make this an issue, but it is an issue. And it's a very, very important issue. And in some member states, it's really, really broken. And it needs to be fixed, because every new generation of farmers, and I'm happy to say we're getting young people interested in agriculture again, they need knowledge and information. And I think that's been stressed by all of those who spoke prior to me. So that's one issue that absolutely needs to be tackled, and I know the Commission are working on that in a particular way. I suppose the second issue I want to mention is the perception of agriculture and food. And I think that if I were to ask you what you think about agriculture and food, you think of sunny days, a farmer leaning on a gate, maybe a sheepdog by his side or her side. And it's a romantic notion of farming and food production. And sometimes there is romance on a farm. I have some myself because I live on a farm. But a lot of times it's a tough old business. You know, it's quite tough. You're dealing with nature and indeed the additional complexities of climate change. You're a scientist many times. You have to deal with animal welfare issues. You have to deal with new diseases and pests. So it's a very scientific business. And yet as consumers, we like that old-fashioned feel of the farmer, don't we? It's reassuring. And I wouldn't dismiss that, because in a similar way, I think that land use and the countryside will increasingly play a much bigger role for mental health issues. And even in urban areas, we need more green spaces. And I know some of you will know of nature deficit disorder. I suffer from it by Friday of every week when I'm in Brussels. I need to get back and reconnect. And I think societies by 2030 will need to reconnect with that intrinsic desire to see and feel the countryside. And we'll do that through our food systems and our food chain. And that's why the food industry very cleverly markets that image of, you know, the local farmer and that connection. And that's something that we have to be mindful of as we look towards this new era and new vision for food and for the agriculture sector. And how can we reduce the length of our chain? How can we make it fairer? It's an issue that I talk about and I've worked a lot in terms of how do we make the pricing structure much fairer? And Paul, thank you for raising the issue of how do we make the cake bigger rather than literally people fighting for a share of that very fixed cake. What that is doing, in my view, and let me explain, what I see and I'm very concerned about is that if price becomes the driving factor in all things, and price, and these are important issues, then sustainability gets squashed somewhere and we will reach a crisis point much sooner than we realise. And you know, I talk a lot to producers, and they're large and small. This isn't an issue for just small producers, it's for all producers, where they feel under incredible pressure because it's coming down from this idea of price to match this price pressure in a way which cannot deliver on the water challenge, on the biodiversity challenge, on some of the moral questions around the food supply chain. So part of your remit as researchers and scientists and those who drive policy must be to take into account those societal demands and needs. And I know the food industry is doing that. It gets a hard time occasionally, particularly the big food. I think the word big is almost equal to bad. But it can't always be the case because, you know, food companies have delivered for us as consumers such choice that almost I'm mesmerized when I go in to shop. Which is why when we come back to, and I need to come back to the idea of research and innovation around food and nutrition, I think as a consumer, I'm really, and I think I'm reflecting a consumer view, I get confused because every day of the week, one food is a superfood and then it falls out of favor and something else takes over. And if there's one thing that consumers want is a consistent message about what they should do around diet. And don't say you need a balanced diet, because quite frankly, what does balance mean anymore? And don't give me a pyramid, but give me information about different foods. But do it in the context of the word pleasure around food. Am I allowed to say the word pleasure? Because it became pretty technical. Paul, you said enjoyment. I'm with you on that one. And culture. Because food cultures differ within member states and indeed globally. So you have a huge challenge as scientists to meet all of those conflicting demands. But I suppose the overarching policy worry that we are faced with and we have to deal with is that natural resources are being depleted. And we are absolutely charged with driving change, but driving it in a way that doesn't threaten those in the food supply chain. Because I think if we threaten, for example, livestock producers, then they will recoil and not be with us on a journey. Because some would say we have to absolutely stop eating this product and only eat this product. And again, those absolute rulings will drive division rather than create a conversation which will deliver results. And for me, it's very straightforward. If we have efficiency along the food supply chain, we will produce more and better, I believe, being more efficient. We should also tackle the issues of income and price and return to all of those in the supply chain, because economic sustainability has to be at the heart of what we're talking about. I go back to my engagement with the Global Hunger Index earlier this week. And while we're making great progress globally around hunger and reducing the number of children who die from hunger, we're seeing huge problems with stunting. And that has an implication for children right throughout their lives and into their adulthood. I think also in Europe, because of the confusion around nutrition, what's good for you or what's not, we are seeing pockets in various groups in society of people making decisions for their children which may not be the best for their overall nutrition. And that's why communicating what you do in this area is absolutely vital, because where do most people get information? Perhaps Twitter, as today, or through traditional media outlets. So your ability to communicate your work is going to be much more crucial into the future. And I know many scientists don't feel that that's their role, but I think you're going to have to take on that mantle if you want your work to penetrate to us as policymakers and indeed to my colleagues who've just been on the panel before me. Because if we don't have that level of engagement, then we will make bad policy. And you know, that's very easy to do. Equally, when we talk about technology, sometimes in Europe there's not an openness to all technologies, and that has consequences both for where research goes and where funding can go, and indeed where companies who do research will go. And I think we need to have a very open conversation in Europe about our willingness to have a conversation about all technologies that are available in the food and nutrition area and see which of those are best placed to be used in our systems. I think being closed to ideas is not healthy, because Europe was a place where ideas would flourish. And I think in the food and nutrition area, we do need to be open to those ideas. I'm also conscious that some scientists have been challenged both physically and indeed threatened for the work that they do. And I think that's something that I would be deeply concerned about, and I'm sure the commissioners share that concern, that if we're to be open about science, then we have to allow that conversation to take place, and that people who do work, and good work in this area, should not feel threatened because of their chosen field of research and expertise. What Europe, I think, does best is come together and share knowledge and information. We are challenged, I think, Paul, you rightly said that the issue of trust in all institutions is challenged. Europe itself is, dealing with challenging times, whether it's migration and security and strife on our borders, and a sense of insecurity amongst people as well. And that's why, for me, this issue where we're talking about, sometimes it sounds sterile, research and innovation. But if you put that in the context of food and nutrition, that speaks to every single citizen at least 3 times a day, if not more. So therefore, it's very real for me, my constituents, for the people that we represent in the European Parliament. And I suppose I should extend an invitation to people who are motivated to be here at this event, and to the commissioners, that perhaps in the Parliament we need to have this joined-up conversation with the leaders in the food industry, the large and the small, so that you might challenge us about policy inconsistency, incoherence, or where we're getting it right. If you take, for example, energy and renewable energies, we did rush towards biomass, using land to produce energy. And then we got a fright because there were commodity scarcities, and we run in the other direction. I think we need a little bit more thought around this, because the pendulum of, in one direction and another does not help us face the challenge of food and nutrition security by 2030. What's really good about today is that I've learned that our commissioners are speaking with one voice, that we have a food industry leader who's prepared to be here and give of his time and his company's commitment in this issue. And I'm very impressed about the zero waste. And maybe you need, as an industry, to talk up more about the good you're doing. And maybe I need to give you the platform to do that with members of the European Parliament and indeed national parliaments. There's lots of talk in all member states about fat taxes, salt taxes, sugar taxes, about the stick of how we make people lead better lives. And I think what we want to do for our citizens, and indeed for ourselves, is get a healthy lifestyle which includes healthy food and nutrition. So I wish you all success with your deliberations. I'm very happy that I could share some of my thoughts with you on what is a hugely political issue in Europe and globally. But it's absolutely fundamental that we get it right. We have the brains in Europe to do this. We have leadership on climate, on soils, on all of these things. We do have the funds to do the research. My challenge to you is make sure research doesn't sit on the shelf or in the computer, that it's put to good effect, and that I see it on my plate. Thank you, and good morning.
Thank you very much, Mairead. And I think our 4 speakers will be leaving us now. So thank you very much for your time, for your viewpoints, and indeed, as I've said earlier, I think some of the points that have been raised will feed into the discussions later. Again, a warm welcome to those of you who have come in over the last half an hour or so. You're all very welcome to Food 2030. Can I again just explain the importance of Twitter for this occasion, because we won't get to go to a lot of you to hear your views. So please use Twitter. The hashtag is hashtag Food 2030 EU. Use that. The team with Research and Innovation will be checking your tweets throughout the day. So now it's actually time to hear from the European Commission, which is directly involved in innovation and research. John Bell is the Director for Bioeconomy with the Directorate General for Research and Innovation. He's now going to talk about the building of the Food 2030 initiative. John.
So good morning to everybody. And I apologise, you have the third Irish speaker in a row. Apparently Irish people are like English speakers except in fast forward. So I apologise in advance. But we seem to be running out of English speakers. This is... Let me be scientific. I draw your attention. This is actually what we're here about today. And what we're here about today is to talk about this, to hear what you say, and to start a conversation right across society and science and innovation and business and politics at local and European and international level about how can we mobilize the research and innovation community to make a difference. So this is what I have to try and unpack in the next few minutes. There will be coffee. Please hang on in there. I will go as quickly as an Irishman can go. I'm the director for the Bioeconomy, and I'd like to thank my colleagues, by the way, who've done a fantastic job in getting all of this together in a short space of time. We are at, as I think Paul Bulka said, we're at an inflection point. And speaking of an inflection point, this will test the IQ of a Commission senior official to see where I can actually move it along. There we go. My children would be proud of me. We are actually at a turning point in our society, and we are at a situation where we have to make some important decisions. Now, we are here because we believe that science actually works in the future tense, and that great science actually makes the future happen. And the essence of what I'm going to be saying this morning and what we're going to be unpacking today is, what is our ambition to be, and where are we going to lead in terms of what research and innovation can do in this? We have to future-proof our food and nutrition systems through research and innovation. I said last year at Expo, there's no security without food security, and no food security without nutrition security. In 2015, we saw the game change taking place in terms of the COP agreement, in terms of the SDGs. So we're now at a situation we can say there will be no sustainability without food and nutrition security. There will be no climate solutions without food and nutrition security. No circularity in our farms or in our cities or in our lives without food and nutrition security. So no pressure, folks. We're all at the heart of this, but we need to shape and develop generation sustainability. So today is all about three things, basically looking at the context, looking at the challenges, and maybe setting out the beginnings in this conversation of where our contributions can be. And literally, we need to step up to the plate. Research and innovation needs to step up to the plate to make that future one that belongs to a sustainable future. Now, I think I'm on slide number 3, probably. No, that's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Actually, there's so many horsemen of the apocalypse, it's starting to look like the Grand National out there. What is actually quite significant here, the existence of this is significant. This is the Commission, the Research and Agriculture Department, in conversation with other parts of the Commission, saying we need to sit down and just try and map out where we think things are. And we need you to tell us what you think about this and whether this is something we really need to talk about, whether we need to consult about it, whether we need to bring it out onto the road, whether we actually need to take it up to a different level of discussion in the future. So that is what today is all about. And I'll just talk, as I said today, about the context, the challenges, and the contributions. And isn't that a wonderful way of describing the work that we're building on? As I said, the perfect storm. The age of disruption. We can talk in many different ways about what we're facing. We know that food and nutrition security are central to the EU's economy and the economy of the world. 1 in 5 of the people who work, 6% of GDP, 7% of trade, 75% of the 2 trillion turnover in the bioeconomy. It's central to people's lives, apart from the 3 meals a day. It's between 12 and 13% of household budgets in most of the EU. It's central to our culture and our well-being. We spend at least 2 hours a day, although I don't seem to have that time anymore, in terms of our food and nutrition. And it's been central to EU research for 30 years. Many of you know this. You've been leading on this. There's some fantastic projects that we saw yesterday, we'll be hearing about in the course of today, looking at the difficult stuff, the long-term effects of nutrition on later health, how we use vitamin D nutrition throughout the health cycle, the control, the basics, food safety. Food safety wasn't a basic 10 or 15 years ago. How we control exposure of contaminants in food and feed and food safety, and where we need to go in terms of allergens in different population groups, bringing data and knowledge and precision into farming, communication technologies in the agri-food domain. I don't know if you met our 2 young Bulgarian young scientists talking how to do that in irrigation yesterday. Animal health and welfare, which is evolving and trying to keep up and keep ahead of the changes that are there. What is waste? Waste isn't waste anymore. Waste is a raw material, the transformation of what is coming out of our system through waste and losses. And networking, food technology, innovation platforms and portals and innovation. So for 30 years, we've been doing things, but I think now we need to start to take a look at what the overall framework should be in terms of where we're going. We know that we're facing this perfect storm. I think most of you have seen the different aspects of this great disruption or inflection. Whether we talk about urbanization or migration, the 65 million people in the world who are actually on the move as we speak, that make quite a large member state. The population changes, not just the 9 billion or the 60% of food demand, but exactly the 3 billion, I think one of our speakers was saying, the new middle class who are coming through, and where you're seeing a convergence in terms of diets and pressure on protein and resources. Urbanization, how cities are moving large numbers of people across the world to live and work and consume in different ways. The 1/3 of the food that we actually lose or waste, which just has to stop. We have to move to a zero waste society where what we're throwing away or losing becomes actually a value that is adding to our society. And where do we go in terms of starting or finishing on the climate impact? What we can say in reaching the targets certainly that the EU has set, and in keeping ourselves to the 1.5 degree if we can, or at max the 2 degree limits in terms of climate change, we need a complete review in terms of how we're actually making, producing, using, converting, changing and reusing the food cycle. So we're looking at a complete system change. We're using 70% of the global fresh water, 30% of energy, and producing around about between 1/4 and 1/3 of greenhouse gases. We can't go on like this. And science and innovation, we're in the forefront of actually making the options possible for policymakers and the people on the ground to change. We have a disconnect between land and sea. We talk in terms of our scientific communities, the different bits of the food system that we're in. You know, we actually have a system of food that actually links the land and the sea, primary production, retailing, logistics, consumption, and reconsumption and recycling and the circular economy. And we need to think about this. So we need a sustainable food and nutrition system on land and sea by 2030. That's what we're actually here to try and think about, to imagine and to make happen. So when you've had all the bad news about the various galloping horsemen of the apocalypse, we have to think that science and innovation is about making new things possible. It's about the opportunity. Jean Monnet, when he originated the European Union concept, he said, when you're facing impossible constellation of facts, you need to change the context. And there is a growing political momentum to act. The question is, what will be the role of research and innovation in this, in meeting the SDGs and COP21? The first enlightenment after the earthquake in Portugal 250 years ago was about reason shaping progress. We're now at a second chance where the second enlightenment has to be about sustainability shaping survival. So how does science and research contribute to that? And food nutrition security is the connecting tissue in the future of sustainability. So in making the goals that we've got, these sustainable development goals, which are not options anymore, whether it's zero hunger or reducing waste or moving to a low carbon sustainable society on land and sea, or meeting the requirements of climate change, where for the first time there will be a specific report on how our food system is working and interacting, then we need to actually set out a new direction and move our level of ambition up. And there are just some ideas to keep you buzzing during the coffee break. When we think about some of the areas that many of you are actually working in, you can see that there are an enormous range of opportunities and ideas out there which can be game changers. And the game changers are some of the issues that we need to think about in the course of discussing this document. So we have systemic challenges. We need a systemic breakthrough. Therefore, we need a systemic approach. We need to actually make sure that we had a food systems approach for the first time throughout the chain in looking at some of these issues and in making some of these breakthroughs happen. We've also got an issue in terms of investment. Strangely enough, for the largest single manufacturing industry that employs the most people and has the biggest opportunity for the European Union, we see there's a big investment gap. Because of the lead times between the research and innovation and its effect, because people think of this as a traditional sector, it is indeed as old as the hills, but it needs new knowledge. We're at corporate level in the food sector, we're investing about half as much as the United States and a third of Japanese R&D, and of course other parts of the world are moving quickly on this. I think Phil Hogan mentioned this huge investment package that the Juncker Commission put in place. 316 billion about to be doubled in the next frame. Very, very few takers in the agri-food system. We need to do something about this. And a similar picture in primary agriculture, where I think OECD and Purdue at the recent event on agriculture, primary production, research and development, you could see this enormous gap between the actual disinvestment in R&D, the increase in pressure on solutions and needs, and the research and innovation requirements and the lead time, and the gap is opening up. So we also see in the US that venture capital and other forms of finance are moving in quickly into this area because people understand, as the Commissioner said, that this is actually where the next great revolution will take place in business models and production and consumption. I think, as Paul Bulke was saying, it also means we need different forms of collaboration, new kinds of collaboration. And you know, in Europe we have things like these new EIT kicks and the European Innovation Council that the Commissioner mentioned. We have a lot of instruments, but we need to see where exactly the investment opportunity is and what is needed. And that gets me to, you glad to hear, to part 3. So you're still with me. Part 3 is really, how do we turn aspiration to realisation? That's really the important part of this document, collectively, wherever we are in this system and in this debate. So we need a food system approach. We need coherence and coordination. We need to work on policy alignment with member states. We need to really look and see where is the need for investment and the market uptake, what they call the framework conditions. We need to look at how emerging technologies can be taken up in new ways of doing science, in ways that are acceptable to society. And we need to look at the drivers there, issues like data. You know, data is actually a currency in the next economy. It is a way and means of empowering. You could see data almost as the new sovereignty in the knowledge-based society that we're moving into. So we need data to be available and accessible as a public good for people and decision makers and scientists and innovators to make this world happen in a sustainable and acceptable way. And we need to work with our colleagues in the member states to look at where we're at on food and nutrition security in terms of output and impact. And last but certainly not least, you know, at least those of us who believe in a connected world still, globalization is a big word, but we live in a world and a planet where we need to take the knowledge that we have and share it to find solutions. So we need to work with our partners across the world. And that's why we have this, that's actually reducing the entire document, I think, to a very manageable graphic that even I can understand. I know there are different category of scientists, and I think I'm the less evolved form. So we have an attempt to try and describe in this document how all of these things fit together. And this is what the food systems approach is all about. Core to this is to frame what we're doing. What's different about this document is we're not saying that we're not going to do this or that. We will continue doing what we do in our scientific work. It's about looking at this issue in a framed, systemic way, through the eyes of, in particular, these 4 priorities. Nutrition, over and under nutrition. we've talked about this absurdity in which one of our great achievements in the world is that we have nearly 800 million people undernourished and 2 billion people obese. I'm not sure that that's exactly where we set out to be 20 years ago, but hats off to us for achieving that. We have one generation, as the Commissioner said. We need to get rid of undernourishment and hunger, and we need to be similarly ambitious in terms of the nutritional challenges. And they break down in different ways for different groups, whether you're elderly or undernourished, or you're coming from an inner city, or you have allergies. There are whole challenges there in terms of how we make nutrition possible for those who have and those who have not. Climate smart and environmentally sustainable food systems. We've heard a lot about this morning. This is a fundamental challenge, systemic challenge, that will test all of our assumptions. We take our food nutrition security for granted at our peril, but that is what we do, and we cannot continue to do that. Circularity and resource efficiency of food systems. All the way through, from the tractor to the bacter, we actually need to find different ways of moving things that are living resources through the system, keeping them in the system, extracting value and benefit, and maintaining the system's sustainability and health from the farm to the fork and backwards. And innovation and the empowerment of communities. There's a recent study, very interesting study on innovation written by Robert Madlin, and one of the interesting areas there, which feeds into this whole trust problem that we have, is about the fact that innovation has to be localized. It has to be where I live and where my family are and my community are, and owned and acceptable there. We need to engage in new ways so that we can actually make growth happen where people live and not up in this macro economy that benefits the few and leaves so many behind. So science and innovation really has to find new ways of bringing innovation through things like market-based, market-creating innovation, user-driven innovation, scientific outreach into communities, and trust-based processes to make it happen. Easy to say, much more difficult to do. And we need to do this in new ways, from the macroeconomy to the microbiome. So these are the four kind of framing priorities for the discussion today. And I appear to be going around in circles, but that isn't new. Even European officials should be recyclable. Food 2030 drivers. So how do we do it? This is a very simple summary of how we intend to do it. But again, I guess we've got 4 horsemen, 4 priorities, 4 2030 drivers. We really need to find and mobilize resources and ideas around really game-changing breakthroughs. Are there big areas where if we can move the scientific and innovation community together, we can really start generating the kind of ecosystems where solutions can come through? There's a long list. Whether you talk about the microbial universe that's emerging in the microbiomes that are there, or on food waste and its transformation, or precision in climate and data in farming, or in the move to personalized nutrition for different groups, or testing the possibilities of offshore or even open seas aquaculture to develop alternative solutions to things like protein, new sources of protein, which is already an overdue issue. Or how would our food safety systems in the future work in such a way that they can be used and efficient and safe, but not lock out the rest of the world and keep consumers in real time happy? You can go through it, the bio-based revolution that's taking place in our industries, on our societies, urban food tech, photosynthesis, low waste and input food processing. The list is endless. Where are we actually going to, as a European Union, convene with our partners in the community game changers? Innovation and investment I've mentioned already, multi-actor platforms, different ways of working on these missions between public and private, and other forms of cooperation. We need to be open in what we do, open science, open data, moving the repositories of data that are there and connecting them up and making the data available to make the change happen. This is a commitment of the European Commission, of Commissioner Moedas, to build open science clouds and to build data commons in areas that are important. And international collaboration. I'll mention in a moment something that the Commissioner has mentioned. We are working with the African Union. We're working in the North and South Atlantic. We're working with China. We're working bilaterally, and we are setting up an international bioeconomy forum to deal with a lot of these issues. We need to find ways to convene actors, not around talk, but around impact. So, nearly there. This is the easy bit. When you mention the Commission's role, I can move on quickly. The main thing here is your role. Is actually how do we get you and the people you connect with to shape this discussion. We're open, we're engaged. We'll talk to many of the people that we know very well, our technology platforms, industrial science partners and so forth, the regions who are there, our international partners, SCAR, our joint programming initiatives, our knowledge and innovation communities, our EIPs. There's no shortage of partners. The thing is to pull it together and set an agenda for change, and we need to identify where are the intelligence gaps. What kind of knowledge do we need to commission to make change possible? We'll organise events and workshops, and we'll reach out to you, and we'll bring a lot of it into the design of the next framework programme, which is starting to be thought about internally. This is of interest to some of you very specifically. Just to show you our commitment to this, we're actually funding what's called a support action under Horizon 2020, which will allow people to drive this process forward, a new way to structure the discussion as we take it forward. Open to multi-actor engagement, putting things into practice, assisting and exploiting new research and innovation breakthroughs, aligning funders, and crucially, this is like an ecumenical movement, bringing social scientists and other scientists together. We may get a Nobel Prize for this. To actually bring people to have an integrated approach to finding the solutions and identifying the knowledge and the bridges that need to be built to have solutions that will actually work out. So this is open at the moment, and the closing date actually is Valentine's Day 2017. And I know there's a lot of interest there, and a lot of people in the room are interested in being part of that. That will be a critical driver helping us to navigate our way through what we hope is not simply a conference, but the beginning of a framework discussion together. I'll just very briefly, before I finish, talk about the International Bioeconomy Forum, which was announced by Commissioner Moedas this morning. We're going to create a platform for research and innovation to look at, in a very flexible way, and co-owned and co-shaped with our international partners, how we can actually move research and innovation to have a big impact on some of these areas that need the science to be mapped out and the division of labour to be made and a big push to be made so that these game changers can happen. And I can tell you already with our JPIs and our IRANETs and countries from across the world, when we set this up formally next year, we will already have hit the ground running. There's a huge interest in areas like the microbiomes across the way. This is the microbial universe revolution that's taking place. We're going to hook up with our partners around the world, see who's doing what, see where the gaps are, connect the different communities, make the data available, maybe get the researchers to move around a bit, connect up with innovation and finance, and actually make some of these things happen. So we may even start by looking at, could we get, let's pick a sustainable development goal like number 2, about dealing with hunger. What would we need to do as a scientific community in some of these areas to actually end hunger? Nice to talk about, but actually difficult to do. There's a lot of science out there that contribute to that. What is needed in terms of plant health globally? How do we get precision agriculture to function properly? There's a whole list of areas. What is the future of forestry in a lot of these debates in agroforestry? So the IBF will be up and running next year. We have a workshop tomorrow. Many people here will be going to it on the microbiomes. So there's already a movement. Science is always more global than most other aspects. And we'll try and make sure that this is a process and a structure that can contribute to driving the wheels forward. Now the smoke is going up here, so there'll be an eviction chair here in a second. So I'm finishing, you'll be glad to hear. And I promise, I don't know if you'll actually have to listen to any more Irish people today. We've had our full quotient for the year. So how do we conclude? The basic thing is take ownership. You're the people who own the ideas in this whole food system. We need a food system approach. We need to bring everybody together, whatever your interests are, to structure where we go on solving these problems. We very much need to get research and innovation to step up in terms of its ambition and maybe in terms of the funding and the commitment to getting some of these things done. And we need an agenda which is focused on solving some of these problems and not simply us talking to ourselves about the things that interest us. And given the gravity and urgency of what we're dealing with, when we talk about the people who are depending on these solutions now and in the future, we need research and innovation in food nutrition security actually to turn sustainability into the new meaning of modernity in generations to come. In a world where we say, looking at all of these challenges, surely enough is enough. Well, for science and research and innovation, it's our job to make sure that by 2030, enough will be enough for each and every one. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, John. Okay, and unfortunately you will have to listen to another Irish person because I will be chairing the various panel debates that we're going to have for the rest of the day. Now, you've been fantastic. I'm sure you're dying for a cup of coffee, cup of tea, a break. We are running around half an hour behind schedule. So can I ask you to be back in the room here for, will we say 25 past 11, half an hour from here? If you can be back here, and for those who are taking part in the panel debates as well, can we make sure that the first panelists, that you're all here ready to go, so that, you know, at 25 past 11 everybody's back here, and we'll claw back time during the lunch break. So I've been told that the easiest way for you to get your cup of coffee or tea or your break is to come through these doors here to get to the food village, which is where the refreshments will be. If you go to the back, it's going to take you longer. So if you wouldn't mind coming through these doors here, and then if you please can come back to be all back here for 25 past 11, that would be great. Thanks very much.